My girlfriend disappeared after our argument, a year later. I saw her face in a missing persons documentary. I still remember the last thing she said to me. It wasn't "I love you" or even "goodbye." It was, "You don't even see what's right in front of you, do you?" And then she slammed the door hard enough to rattle the photo frames on the hallway wall. That was a year ago. Her name was Lena, 26, brilliant loud when she left, quiet when she was angry. The kind of girl who filled a room without meaning to. She was studying psychology, worked part-time at a bookstore, and had this habit of reading people like they were open pages. It was something I loved about her, until I became the one she was trying to read. We'd been dating for almost 3 years. We lived together in a small apartment on the east side of town. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. I worked remotely in tech support, and she was finishing her degree. Things were fine, stable, or at least I thought they were. But that night, the night she disappeared, everything changed. It started with something stupid. Most fights do. She came home from work, tossed her bag on the couch, and asked me if I'd talk to my boss about taking a break. I'd been stressed, overworked, apparently snapping more than I realized. She wanted me to take a few days off. I told her I couldn't. She said I was choosing work over her again. I said she was overreacting. It spiraled from there. Small words turned sharp, silence turned into shouting. She accused me of not caring, of being distant. I accused her of making everything about her. It was one of those fights where you can't even remember what started it, but somehow you both end up bleeding. Then she said that line, about me not seeing what's right in front of me, and walked out. I figured she just needed space. She'd done that before. Usually she'd go stay with her friend Becca for a night or two, then come back when things cooled down. So I didn't follow her. I didn't text. Didn't call. I let her go. That was my first mistake. By morning, she still hadn't come home. I texted her, no response. Called, straight to voicemail. I tried Becca. She said Lena hadn't come by, hadn't called. By the third day, panic started to set in. I called her parents. They hadn't heard from her either. That's when I went to the police. They filed a missing person report, took my statement, asked me all the obvious questions, when I'd last seen her, what she was wearing, whether we'd fought. I told them everything. I even showed them our texts from that night. They didn't say it, but I could tell what they were thinking. Boyfriend. Fight. Missing girlfriend. I became the prime suspect in a story I didn't even know I was part of. For the next few weeks, my life turned into an interrogation. Cops came to the apartment, searched the car, checked my phone records. Neighbors whispered. My parents stopped answering calls from friends, and Lena was just gone. Her phone was last pinged near the river, a few miles from our place. Her car was found parked near an overlook, keys still inside. No signs of struggle, no note. Just absence so heavy it swallowed everything. They dragged the river twice. Found nothing. The media picked it up. Local woman vanishes after fight with boyfriend. My face was on the news, pixelated in the background like a ghost haunting my own life. I lost my job. My friends drifted away. Even Becca stopped returning my calls after she gave her statement. Everyone thought I did it, that I'd killed her, hidden the body, and made up a story. But I didn't. I loved her. I kept her photo on the nightstand, even when people told me to move on. I couldn't, because there were things that didn't make sense. Things that made me believe she was still out there, like the texts. A week after she went missing, I got one. From her number, it said, "Stop looking for me," just that. No punctuation. No context. The police said it could have been automated. Maybe a scammer who got her phone. But the weird thing was, the message came from a signal tower near our old university. And Lena, she used to have night classes there. They traced it. Nothing. Her phone had been off since then. Months passed. Leads went cold. My life felt like an unfinished sentence, until last week. I was eating dinner, scrolling through channels, half asleep on the couch, when a documentary caught my eye. It was one of those true crime shows, Vanished Faces of the Missing. Normally, I avoided that stuff. Too close to home? But something made me pause. Maybe fate. Maybe guilt. They were showing different unsolved cases, families crying, detectives talking. And then, there she was, Lena. Her photo flashed on the screen. Same smile, same dimple on her left cheek. But the caption below made my blood freeze. Unidentified woman, possible victim in Pacific Northwest trafficking case. The footage zoomed out. They were showing security camera clips, grainy, low quality, from a bus terminal in Oregon, nearly 600 miles from here. A woman walking with 2 men, head down, shoulders slumped. The narrator said, "She's been seen multiple times under different names, possibly held against her will. But it wasn't just the resemblance. She was wearing my hoodie. The gray one with the torn cuff, the one that went missing when she did." I dropped my fork. My stomach twisted. It couldn't be coincidence. The documentary moved on, but I couldn't breathe. I replayed that clip again and again online later that night. I froze the frame, zoomed in. Her face was blurry, but it was her. I knew it was her. And the background, the bus station, it wasn't far from the coast. Near a town called Astoria. That name stuck in my head. I didn't tell the police. Not yet. I don't even know why. Maybe because part of me didn't trust them anymore. Maybe because if it really was her and she didn't want to be found, I needed to know why. The next morning, I packed a bag, took my car, and drove 12 hours straight to Astoria. It's a small coastal town. Foggy streets, fishing boats, seagulls that never shut up. The kind of place where everyone knows each other's business. I rented a cheap room near the docks. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I started asking around. Gas stations, motels, coffee shops. Showed people her photo. Most just shrugged. One older guy at the diner said he thought he'd seen someone who looked like her at the bus stop a few weeks ago. Said she was with a tall man in a leather jacket. That matched the video. So I waited there the next morning, pretending to sip coffee and watch the buses. Hours passed. Nothing. Then, just as the fog rolled in thick from the bay, I saw her, standing by the ticket counter. Hair longer, darker, maybe dyed. Wearing a heavy coat. But it was her. She looked thinner, paler, eyes hollow in a way that didn't belong to the girl I knew. And she wasn't alone. That same tall guy, leather jacket, beard, maybe late 30s, stood next to her, talking quietly. She barely looked up. I wanted to run to her, to scream her name, but something in her face stopped me cold. Fear, not surprise. Not shock. Fear. She saw me. I know she did. Our eyes met, just for a second, and she shook her head, ever so slightly. Then the man turned. He saw me watching, and that's when everything went sideways. He whispered something to her, grabbed her arm, and they both disappeared into the crowd near the buses. I shoved through people, calling her name. Lena, wait! But they were gone. The driver said they'd boarded a bus heading north, destination Seattle. I stood there, heart pounding, breath shaking, realizing two things at once. Lena wasn't dead. Someone didn't want her to be found. I drove after that bus for nearly 3 hours before I lost it in traffic. Now, I'm sitting in a motel room outside Olympia, typing this while the rain hits the window, trying to piece together what the hell is happening. I don't know if she's running from something or with someone, but I swear, I'm going to find her, no matter who I have to go through to do it. The rain hadn't stopped all night. It came down in relentless waves, hammering the paper-thin roof of the motel until the sound felt like it was drilling straight into my skull. I hadn't slept since I saw her at the bus terminal in Astoria. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, pale, afraid, and older somehow. The same eyes, but hollowed out, like she'd seen something that scraped the soul right out of her. I'd driven 3 hours chasing that bus north, headlights cutting through the storm, adrenaline making my hands shake the whole time. But somewhere along Highway 101, I lost it. The bus vanished into the dark, and I was left staring at empty road and the reflection of my own failure in the windshield. Now, in this motel outside Olympia, all I had was a cup of cold coffee, an aching body, and the blurry image of Lena from that documentary. I tried to convince myself to call the police again, tell them I'd seen her. Maybe they could track the bus, pull the cameras from the station. But a voice in the back of my head whispered, "They didn't believe you before. And even if they did now, what if she didn't want to be found?" Because the look in her eyes when she saw me, it wasn't longing. It wasn't relief. It was terror. Someone was making her afraid. I scrolled through my phone, replaying the bus terminal clip for what must have been the 100th time. I zoomed in on the man she was with. Tall, beard, leather jacket, scar under his chin. He looked like trouble even in bad resolution. I ran a reverse image search on the frame I'd captured, but nothing came up. Then I remembered something. Lena used to work part-time at a coffee shop during her first year of college. She once mentioned a guy who kept showing up, wouldn't take no for an answer. She said he gave her the creeps. I brushed it off back then. But what if this was him? I searched her old social media accounts, the ones she hadn't used since before she disappeared. Most were inactive, frozen like insects in amber. But on one of her old Facebook albums, I found something that made my chest tighten. A picture of her behind the counter at that coffee shop, smiling. And in the background, blurred but unmistakable, was a tall man in a leather jacket. Same build, same stance. The caption was from someone who commented years ago. "That guy again? He never quits LOL." I felt a chill crawl up my spine. This wasn't random. This wasn't some stranger she met on the road. Whoever that man was, he'd been watching her long before she vanished. I closed the laptop and rubbed my face, trying to think. If she was with him now, after all this time, maybe she'd been taken, trafficked, coerced, brainwashed, something dark and ugly. The documentary had mentioned trafficking. Maybe that wasn't an exaggeration, but then why the text message? "Stop looking for me." Was that him? Or was that her trying to protect me? I checked the time. 5:42 a.m. The sky outside was just starting to lighten, the rain thinning into mist. I had two choices. Go home, tell the cops everything, and hope they took it seriously. or keep following her trail myself. I chose the second. By sunrise, I was back on the highway, following the route north toward Seattle. I stopped at every rest area, diner, and bus stop along the way, showing people her photo. Most said no. Some squinted, thought for a moment, then shrugged. It wasn't until I reached Tacoma that I got lucky. At a gas station near the port, the cashier, a kid maybe 19, said, "Yeah, I've seen her. She came in with a guy last week. Looked tired. They bought a burner phone and left fast." My pulse spiked. "Did you see where they went?" He shook his head. "No, but she dropped something. I picked it up after they left." He pulled out a small silver locket from behind the counter. The chain was broken. I froze. It was Lena's. I'd given it to her on our first anniversary. Had her initials engraved inside. I opened it. The photo inside was faded from wear, but it was us, smiling on the pier, arms wrapped around each other. My hands trembled. "Can I keep this?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Sure, man." She looked scared, though. Like, really scared. I thanked him and left, the locket clutched tight in my hand. I sat in my car for a long time, staring at it, trying to breathe. She'd been here a week ago. That meant she was still moving, maybe heading north, maybe trying to escape. If she'd left it behind, maybe it wasn't an accident. Maybe it was a message. I checked my phone, zoomed in on the map. If she was taking buses, there were only a few likely routes heading north. Seattle, Bellingham, maybe even across to Vancouver. But then I noticed something. Near the edge of the map, along the coast, was a town called Grey Ridge. It was small, barely a dot, but something about it made my gut twist, because I remembered Lena mentioning it once, a year before she vanished. We'd been driving home from a weekend trip, passing signs for that same area. She'd said, "My mom used to bring me there when I was little. There's this abandoned lighthouse. I always wanted to go back." I didn't think about it again until now. I looked up the bus schedule. There was one route that went from Tacoma up through the coast, stopping at a few small towns, including Grey Ridge. If I were hiding or running, that's where I'd go. By noon, I was back on the road. The drive was long and lonely, the kind that makes you question your own sanity. I kept the radio off, just listening to the hum of the tires and the whisper of rain against the glass. By the time I reached Grey Ridge, the sun was dipping behind heavy clouds. The place was small, maybe 2 streets, a diner, a few old houses, a harbor that looked half abandoned. The lighthouse she'd mentioned stood at the far end of the cliff, barely visible through fog. It felt wrong. The air was too still. I parked near the diner and went inside. The waitress, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes, asked what I wanted. I ordered coffee and asked if she'd seen a girl matching Lena's description. Dark hair, mid-20s, traveling with a tall man. She froze for half a second, then looked around before lowering her voice. "You're not the first to ask." My heartbeat kicked up. "Someone else was looking for her?" She nodded. "Couple days ago, man in a suit. Didn't look like a cop." "What did he say?" "That he was her brother." Lena didn't have a brother. I set my cup down carefully. "Did you tell him anything?" She hesitated, then nodded. "I said she came in here once with that guy in the jacket. Looked like they'd been traveling for days." She barely spoke. The man did all the talking. "Paid cash. When was this?" "About a week and a half ago. They took a room up near the old Lighthouse Road. Cabin 3, I think." I left cash on the counter and walked out without finishing my coffee. The cabins she mentioned weren't far, old, scattered along the hill near the cliff. The kind of place people rent when they want to disappear. Cabin 3 was dark when I got there. Curtains drawn. No car outside. I circled the place, careful not to make noise. The back window was cracked open slightly. I pulled it up and slipped inside. The air smelled like damp wood and old cigarettes. There were 2 cups on the table, still half full, a bag on the floor, and on the bed, a folded piece of paper. My chest tightened. I picked it up and unfolded it. It was written in Lena's handwriting. "If you find this, don't look for me again. He's always watching. I love you, but you won't understand. Please go home." There was a smudge on the page, water, maybe tears. Before I could process it, I heard a sound outside. Footsteps. I froze, heart slamming against my ribs. The door creaked open. And standing, there in the doorway, silhouetted by the gray light, was the man in the leather jacket. He looked straight at me and smiled. The man didn't say anything at first. He just stood there in the doorway, blocking the only exit, water dripping from his jacket, eyes locked on mine. That smile wasn't friendly. It was deliberate, almost rehearsed. The kind of smile a predator gives when he knows you're trapped. For a second, I couldn't move. My pulse was a drumbeat in my ears. The note in my hand shook slightly as I instinctively took a step back. "Didn't think you'd actually find her," he said finally, his voice low, calm. "You've been busy." I swallowed hard. "Where is she?" He tilted his head, amused. "You shouldn't have come here." My fists clenched. I asked where she is. That smile widened, revealing teeth that didn't quite match the softness of his tone. "She doesn't belong to you anymore." The The words hit me like a slap. He took a step closer, boots crunching against the floorboards. I could smell cigarettes and rain off him, the faint trace of something metallic, maybe blood, maybe just rust. You think she wants you to find her? He continued. You think you're some kind of savior? Who are you? I demanded. He chuckled, eyes glinting. Someone who knows what she really is. What the hell does that mean? He didn't answer. He took another step forward. My back brushed against the cold glass of the window. I was cornered. Then, without warning, he lunged. I threw myself sideways as his hand shot out, catching the edge of my shirt. Fabric tore. I ducked under his arm, shoved past him, and bolted for the door. He shouted something, a sharp, guttural sound, as I sprinted into the rain. My feet pounded the muddy path, breath ragged, lungs burning. I didn't dare look back until I reached my car. He was standing in the cabin doorway, watching me. Still smiling, jumped in, slammed the lock, and started the engine. Gravel kicked up as I sped down the hill, headlights slicing through the fog. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip the wheel. When I finally stopped, miles away, near an abandoned gas station, I just sat there, chest heaving, trying to make sense of what had just happened. He knew Lena. He knew I was coming. And that note, he's always watching. It wasn't paranoia. It was a warning. But from what? Or who? I replayed the moment in my head again and again. His words stuck with me. You think she wants you to find her? You think you're some kind of savior? Was she working with him? Had she chosen this? No, that didn't fit. The look in her eyes at the bus station was real. That was fear. I had to get proof. Something solid. I parked behind a closed diner, found a Wi-Fi signal, and opened my laptop. I searched for anything about the man. Descriptions, reports, missing persons tied to a tall man in a leather jacket. Nothing came up. But when I typed Grey Ridge missing person, an article appeared. It was dated 6 months ago. Local woman vanishes near Grey Ridge Lighthouse. The photo showed a brunette, not Lena, but young, maybe early 20s. Last seen leaving a diner with a man matching the same description. No arrests. No suspects. Case unsolved. I felt a cold pit form in my stomach. This guy wasn't just some random drifter. He'd done this before. And Lena, she might be next. I printed the article and circled the address of the investigating officer. His name was Detective Harris, based out of Aberdeen, the nearest major town. I didn't want to go to the police before. Now I didn't have a choice. By morning, I was standing outside a squat gray building with a faded sign, Gray's County Sheriff's Office. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the air thick and heavy. Inside, the place smelled like old coffee and paper. A woman at the desk looked up. Can I help you? I need to speak to Detective Harris. It's about a missing person. She frowned, asked my name, and disappeared into the back. A few minutes later, a man in his 50s appeared. Tall, mustache, tired eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. Harris, he said, extending a hand. What's this about? I handed him the photo of Lena, the one I'd printed from the documentary. She's been missing for a year. I saw her in a trafficking documentary, and I think the man she's with is connected to another disappearance here in Grey Ridge. He studied the photo, brow furrowing. Where'd you get this? Bus station security footage, Astoria. I tracked her here, Grey Ridge. I found this note. I slid the folded paper across the table. He opened it, read silently, then looked back at me. You're saying you saw this man in Grey Ridge? Last night. He broke into the cabin I was searching. Harris leaned back, exhaling slowly. You're lucky you're still breathing. What do you mean? He tapped the table. We've had whispers about him for years. Goes by different names. Walker, Cole, sometimes the broker. Rumors say he moves people. Mostly women. Never stays long enough to get caught. I felt my throat tighten. So he's a trafficker. That's the theory. But no one's ever been able to prove it. I clenched my fists. Then help me prove it, he sighed. If what you're saying is true, she's not just missing. She's under his control. And that means this isn't a rescue and it's a takedown. He stood, grabbed his coat. You said Grey Ridge Cabin 3? Yeah, he nodded once. Let's go. We drove back together. 2 hours through winding roads and fog so thick it looked alive. When we reached the cabins, the place was empty. Cabin 3 was open, the door swinging in the wind. Inside, the cups were gone. The note still there but crumpled, like someone had handled it. Harris scanned the room. He's gone. Probably knew we'd come. How? He didn't answer. He just stared out the window toward the cliff. You said she mentioned a lighthouse? Yeah, he nodded. Then that's where we start. We hiked down the muddy path toward the lighthouse, the sound of waves crashing against the rocks below. The place was a skeleton of what it used to be. Peeling paint, shattered glass, the faint creak of old metal in the wind. Careful, Harris said. Watch your step. We reached the base of the tower. The door was chained shut, but the lock looked fresh, not rusted like the rest. Harris cut it with bolt cutters from his trunk. We pushed the door open, flashlights slicing through the darkness. Inside, the smell hit first. Damp air, mold, and something else. Something foul. We followed a narrow staircase down to a lower room. The walls were lined with old equipment, ropes, crates, metal shelves, and in the corner, a small table, a burner phone, and a stack of passports. Different names, different faces, but one of them stopped my breath cold. Lena. Same photo, new name. Emily Ward. Harris swore under his breath. He's cycling them. New IDs, new cities. He's moving them like ghosts. Then we heard it. A noise from above. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Harris motioned for silence, drew his weapon, and gestured toward the stairs. I followed, heart thundering. The footsteps stopped. Then a voice echoed through the darkness. Detective Harris. Harris froze. The voice was calm, familiar. I thought you'd learn to stay out of my business. It was him. The man in the leather jacket. Show yourself. Harris barked. The voice chuckled. You shouldn't have brought him here. He's in deeper than he knows. Then a sound, something metallic clattering to the floor, a flash. Gunfire exploded through the dark. I dropped, ears ringing. Harris shouted, "Return fire." Glass shattered somewhere above. I crawled behind a crate, heart hammering. When the noise stopped, there was only the sound of the ocean and Harris's ragged breathing. I looked up. The man was gone. Harris lowered his gun slowly, muttering, "He's toying with us." Then we both heard it, faint, echoing from deeper inside the tower. A woman's voice, calling my name. Ryan. It was her, Lena. Her voice came from somewhere deep inside the lighthouse, faint, trembling and echoing against the cold stone walls. Ryan. The sound froze my blood. It was impossible to mistake. I hadn't heard her voice in a year, but every syllable carried the same gentle tone that used to calm me when I couldn't sleep. Only now it was cracked, desperate. "Ryan, please. Help me." I turned to Harris, who was reloading his weapon. "Did you hear that?" He nodded once, grim. "Basement level. Stay behind me." We descended the staircase, flashlights slicing through the dark like blades. The air grew colder, heavier with every step. The smell, damp concrete, mold, and something metallic, grew stronger. The stairs ended at a steel door, half rusted but reinforced with a new padlock. Harris tried the handle. "It's locked." Without thinking, I grabbed a wrench off one of the shelves and slammed it against the lock until it broke. The sound echoed like thunder in the small space. When the door creaked open, the beam of our flashlights fell onto something that made my stomach turn. It was a room. Small. Windowless. Lit only by a single hanging bulb that buzzed weakly. In the corner was a cot. And on that cot, thin, pale, shaking, was Lena. She looked up slowly when the light hit her. Her face was gaunt, her hair matted and darker than I remembered. But her eyes, they were hers. "Ryan?" she whispered. I didn't wait. I rushed forward, dropping the flashlight, falling to my knees beside her. "Lena! Oh my God, Lena!" She flinched when I reached for her, instinctively, like she wasn't sure if I was real. "It's me," I said softly. "It's really me." Her lips trembled. "You shouldn't have come." Harris scanned the room, gun drawn. "We need to move, now!" But Lena shook her head, panic flashing across her face. No, you don't understand. He'll kill you." "He's not gone." "He's never gone." "Lena, he's not here," I said, trying to steady my voice. "We can leave, okay? We can go home." She gripped my wrist with surprising strength. "There is no home." I stared at her, confused. Harris checked the hallway. "We're clear for now." "Get her up." I helped her to her feet. She was weak, but she could walk. Her body trembled with every step. We moved through the corridor, up the narrow stairs, my hand never leaving hers. Every creak of the wood made me jump, expecting him, that man, to appear out of the dark again. When we reached the main floor, Harris motioned toward the door. "Go. I'll cover you." We stepped into the fog. The cold air hit her like a wave. She gasped, eyes darting wildly. "Lena, it's okay," I whispered. "We're safe now," but her gaze wasn't on me. It was fixed on something behind me. I turned, and my blood went cold. He was there, standing just a few feet away, near the base of the lighthouse. Same jacket, same scar, same empty smile. Harris raised his gun instantly. "Don't move!" The man just laughed, low, quiet, mocking. "You don't get it, do you?" "Hands where I can see them," Harris barked, but the man didn't move. He just stared at me. "You should have listened to her." Then, before Harris could react, he flicked something from his sleeve, a small metal canister. Smoke burst out instantly, thick and blinding. Harris cursed, coughing. I pulled Lena close, dragging her away from the door. I heard 2 gunshots. Screams, then silence. When the smoke cleared, Harris was on the ground, blood pooling under his shoulder. "Go!" he gasped, waving his good hand toward the car. "Go?" I hesitated for half a second, torn between helping him and getting Lena out, but the sound of footsteps closing in made the choice for me. I half-carried Lena down the path, rain mixing with fog, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear her crying. The car was 100 feet away when something whistled past my ear. A bullet. I ducked, pulling her behind the guardrail. The next shot hit metal, sparking. "Keep your head down," I shouted. We crawled through the wet grass, keeping low until we reached the car. I fumbled for the keys with shaking hands, shoved her inside, and started the engine. The headlights flared, and for a brief second in the beam, I saw him standing by the cliff watching us. Not running, not chasing, just watching. Then he raised a hand, 2 fingers to his temple like a mock salute, and vanished into the fog. We sped down the road, tires screeching, neither of us speaking. My hands were trembling so hard the wheel shook. After a few miles, I pulled over near an abandoned gas station. Harris was still back there. Maybe alive, maybe not. But I couldn't go back. Not yet. Lena sat in the passenger seat staring out the window. She hadn't stopped shaking. "Lena," I said softly, "what happened to you?" She didn't answer right away. Her voice when it came was barely a whisper. "He found me after we fought. I was walking home and he pulled up beside me. Said you'd sent him to get me. I didn't believe him at first, but he knew things. Things only you could have told him." I blinked. "What?" The argument. The words we said. Even what I was wearing. She looked at me, tears in her eyes. "How did he know, Ryan?" My stomach dropped. "I don't know," I said. "I swear I don't know." But she didn't seem convinced. "He said you wanted me gone, that you told him to take care of it. And when I tried to run, he said you'd never come looking. He said you'd already moved on. I could barely breathe." "Lena, that's not true." "You know that's not true." She looked away. "I didn't. Not then." The silence between us was suffocating. I finally said, "Who is he?" She shuddered. "He calls himself Cole, but that's not his name. He has others. He's part of something, a group. They find people, use them, sell them. I tried to run so many times, but he always finds me." My chest tightened. "We'll go to the police. The FBI, anyone. They'll protect you." She shook her head. "You don't get it. He has people everywhere, even in law enforcement." I remembered the man in the suit the waitress mentioned, claiming to be her brother. The way Cole always seemed one step ahead. She wasn't being paranoid. I gripped the wheel tighter. "Then we'll disappear." She gave a broken laugh. "You can't disappear from him. You can only buy time." Lightning flashed outside, illuminating her face for a brief second. Hollow, haunted, resigned. "Then we'll buy it," I said. "As much as we need." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she nodded. We drove through the night, avoiding main roads, heading east into the forest. By dawn, we found a cabin. Old, empty, half buried under moss and fog. I parked behind a row of trees and helped her inside. It was freezing, but dry. We built a small fire and sat close, the silence thick with everything unsaid. At some point, she reached for my hand. Her grip was weak, but familiar. "Ryan," she whispered, "if he finds us again, promise me something. Anything. Don't try to save me." I turned to her, stunned. "What are you talking about?" She stared into the fire, her eyes glassy. "Because if he does, it's already too late." The flames crackled. Wind howled outside. And then, from somewhere in the distance, a single car engine echoed through the woods growing closer. The sound of the engine grew louder, slow, steady, like whoever was driving didn't need to hurry, because they already knew exactly where we were. Lena froze, her hand tightening around mine. "He found us," she whispered. I killed the fire instantly. The cabin plunged into darkness, the faint smell of smoke clinging to the air. I moved to the window, careful not to make a sound. Through the slats, I saw headlights sweeping across the trees, then fading. Whoever it was had parked at the bottom of the hill. I turned back to Lena. "There's a back door. We can still run," she shook her head. "No, he'll expect that. Then what do you suggest?" She didn't answer, just stared at the floorboards like she was remembering something. "There's a cellar. Beneath the kitchen?" "How do you know?" Her eyes flicked up to mine. "Because this isn't the first time I've been here." Before I could ask what that meant, she pulled me toward the kitchen. The boards creaked under our feet. She knelt, pulled up a loose plank, and revealed a narrow set of stairs leading down into darkness. "Go," she whispered. I hesitated. "Lena, go." The sound of a car door slamming outside cut off any argument. We slipped down into the cellar just as footsteps crunched through the wet grass above us. I pulled the plank back into place, sealing us in. The cellar smelled of dirt and rot. My flashlight beam wavered across the space. Stone walls, shelves of old jars, and something that made my heart skip. A metal chair bolted to the floor, with leather straps still attached. Lena saw it too. Her breath hitched. "He used this place," she whispered, "to break people." I felt a rush of anger, a kind I'd never felt before. I wanted to drag that man down here and end him. But first we had to survive. Above us, the cabin door creaked open. I turned off the flashlight. Darkness swallowed us whole. His footsteps were slow, deliberate, each one a dull thud above our heads. He was humming, that same low tune I'd heard him whistle at the lighthouse. Then, silence. We waited. Every second felt like an hour. Then his voice. Calm, smooth, too close. "Ryan." My blood froze. You've done well, he said. Better than most. I thought you'd stop after the police. But you're stubborn. That's admirable. I clenched my jaw, trying to control my breathing. She's down there with you, isn't she? Lena pressed her hand against my arm, shaking her head. I told her you'd come, he continued, pacing slowly. Told her you wouldn't rest until you found her. You always were predictable. I couldn't take it anymore. What do you want? I shouted. The footsteps stopped. I want you to understand, he said. She didn't disappear because of me. She disappeared because of you. What the hell does that mean? He chuckled. Ask her. I turned to Lena. She was trembling, staring at the ground. Lena, I whispered. What is he talking about? Tears welled in her eyes. Ryan, please, don't listen to him. But he wasn't finished. She told me everything. The fights, the silence, the secrets you kept from her. You broke her long before I found her. I gritted my teeth. You're lying, am I? He dropped something heavy on the floor above us, a metallic clang that made Lena flinch. Then came the sound of boots moving toward the door. I'll give you a head start, he said softly. Run if you want. It'll make it more interesting. The door slammed. We waited. 1 minute, 2, 10, before I finally lifted the plank again. The cabin was empty, but outside the fog had thickened into a wall. Lena stayed frozen at the base of the stairs. He won't stop. I climbed out, scanning the trees. Nothing but mist. Then we don't stop either. We grabbed what little we had, a flashlight, some food, the map, and ran. We followed a dirt trail that cut through the woods toward the highway. The air was wet and cold, our breaths coming in visible clouds. Every branch snap behind us made me spin around, expecting him. After nearly an hour, we reached a clearing. Through the fog, I could see the faint glow of a town below, lights scattered along a riverbank. Lena stumbled beside me, exhausted. We can't go there, she said. He'll find us. We need help. Her eyes filled with panic. No, you don't understand. He has people there. Grey Ridge, Aberdeen, even Seattle, he owns them. You can't trust anyone? Then what do we do? Just keep running? She looked past me toward the trees. We hide. I know a place. Before I could ask, she was already moving again. We trekked for what felt like hours deeper into the forest. The path turned rocky, steep. Finally, we reached a ravine where an old train tunnel cut through the hillside. This is it, she said. It hasn't been used in years. The tunnel was dark and damp, the walls dripping with condensation. But at least it was shelter. We made a small camp near the entrance, huddled under an old blanket. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, I asked, what did he mean? That you disappeared because of me? She stared at the ground for a long time before answering. You remember the argument we had? The night I left? Of course I do. I wasn't going to leave forever. I just needed air. But before I left, I found something on your computer. My chest tightened. What? Her voice shook. Emails. From someone named CW, he said things about me. About watching me, following me. You said you'd handle it. I blinked. Wait, no. That was a client from work. He'd been harassing one of our employees. I was helping file a report. She shook her head. No, Ryan, you don't understand. He mentioned me. He knew what classes I took, where I worked. He even knew about our anniversary trip. I felt my blood turn to ice. C.W. Cole Walker, the man in the leather jacket. I swallowed hard. Lena, I never told him about you. She looked at me, searching my face. Then how did he know? I opened my mouth, but no words came out. She whispered, he said you gave him access. That you signed off on his account when he got locked out. My heart sank. I did. Months before he went off the grid. I didn't know who he really was. She looked away. He said you brought him to me. And suddenly, everything made sense. The way Cole always knew where she'd be. The text message after she vanished. The details he used to convince her I'd sent him. He'd used me. My credentials. My trust. My mistake. I felt sick. Oh my God. I led him to you. Her eyes softened. You didn't know, but I did. In a way, I had. I ignored the warning signs. The strange emails. The fake accounts. I thought I was too careful. Now she was the one who'd paid for it. I took a deep breath. Then I'm ending this, she frowned. Ryan, no, he's not some phantom. He's a man. Which means he bleeds, she looked terrified. If you go after him, he'll kill you. Then he'll have to try. I stood, pulling my jacket tight. You stay here. I'll draw him away. She grabbed my arm. Please. Don't do this. I have to. She was crying now. He won't stop until one of us is dead. I met her gaze. Then I'll make sure it's him. I turned toward the tunnel mouth. Fog curling like ghosts through the trees outside. And just as I stepped into the cold, I saw something that stopped me dead. Car headlights. But not one. Pair 3, coming slowly down the hill toward us. She was right. He hadn't come alone. We heard the engines before we saw the headlights. A low mechanical growl that rolled down the hill and through the trees like a warning. 3 vehicles cut through the fog, their beams slicing the darkness into stark slices of white and gold. They parked at the edge of the clearing in a slow, deliberate triangle, lights off as if to avoid being seen. Men moved like shadows between them. I could make out shapes, big shoulders, steady steps. They were hunting, not searching. Lena's fingers tightened around mine until I could feel the bones. She whispered he called them his cleaners. The word felt like a curse. They make things disappear? Adrenaline hit like ice. We had to move and there was nowhere to go. The tunnel behind us offered the illusion of shelter but no true escape. The cleaners could circle that hill, cut us off at the highway, wait us out. Standing there, I realized there was one advantage we still had. They expected fear. They expected us to run. They expected me to make mistakes. So I did the only thing I could think of that might give us a sliver of control. Something stupid and dangerous and precise. I stood up slowly, holding Lena's hand high so the dark wouldn't mistake us for running shadows. Go, I mouthed to her, barely moving my lips. She shook her head, but I had to push her. Go, now. She stumbled forward, disappearing inside the tunnel as planned. I stayed outside, hands empty, like a lamb baiting a trap. A boot step crunched in the underbrush and a flashlight beam cut across the fog. One of the cleaners called out, "Stay where you are!" I lifted my hands. "I'm alone," I said loudly. "I came out to see if anyone was following us." Two men circled, their faces low in their hoods. They had the look of men who had been paid to do things they no longer questioned. Their leader, the one I'd seen at the lighthouse, watched from the shadows, leaning on the hood of a truck, the leather jacket a dark smear in the fog. "He didn't move. Search him," the leader said finally. One of the men shoved me roughly, hands on my chest, pushing me backward until I hit the ground and cold mushroomed up my spine. They rifled my pockets. Found nothing but lint, a crumpled map, and a small tourist knife I kept for camping. They smiled at that one. "You got anything else?" one of them asked, voice flat. I kept my face blank. "No," they laughed. "Then we'll take him in. Cole wants a message sent." I knew then that wrestling them physically wasn't an option. There were at least 6 of them between the engines and the trees. Even one of them could have broken my neck. But there was also one piece of leverage they hadn't expected. Pride. Cole wanted to send a message, yes, but he also wanted to humiliate me. He wanted me to flail in front of Lena, to demonstrate the futility of resistance. So I played the part, let them haul me up, cuff me with zip ties that would be easy to snap if I got the right angle. They forced a grin into my face as if to entertain themselves. The leader, Cole, walked up and looked at me like a man looking at a memento. "You ran around a lot, Ryan," he said. "You thought you could fix things by yourself." He spat on the ground. "You made it personal. Where's Harris?" I asked, voice steady. I needed to know if the detective would survive the lighthouse ambush. Cole's eyes flicked, just for a second, like he'd tasted the word. "Harris will think twice." That answered nothing. I let him talk because talking gives arrogance away. "You saw her, didn't you?" he continued. "At the bus station. Stared at her like a ghost. She looked at you, Ryan. She begged you not to follow. But you never listen." He smiled without warmth. "So we brought you here. Show you what you made happen." They shoved me into a truck bed with a tarp thrown over. It smelled of diesel and wet leather and sweat. I felt the world tilt as the truck rolled, tires hissing on gravel. 2 clean-cut men sat across from me like they'd been carved from the same mold. Quiet, efficient, hollow. One of them hummed the same low tune I'd heard at the lighthouse. It felt like a countdown. They drove down the service road toward the small port town where we'd last seen Lena on the surveillance clip. A place with warehouses and shipping containers and the kind of anonymity that feeds this business. The truck stopped. The tarp was yanked back and light cut into my eyes. We were in an old shipping yard, rows of containers, rusted cranes leaning like tired giants. The cleaners led me between the boxes until I saw the figure on a platform up ahead. Lena, chained to a pillar, gaunt and small, but alive. For a second, my chest filled and then contracted as if someone had squeezed it. Cole stood near her, talking quietly to someone on his phone. Beside him was a table with passports, cash, burner phones, and a laptop open to a screen with names and route plans. His ledger of ghosts. He looked up when he sensed movement. "Ah, our hero," he said. The scene he'd orchestrated made my blood run cold. In the center of the platform was a mock trial. A broken chair, lights shimmying, a camera aimed at Lena as if documenting a confession. Cole loved spectacle. He wanted to turn pain into theater. Harris, battered, bandaged but alive, stepped out from the shadows with a rifle. I thought he was dead. He limped toward us with a small tactical team behind him. I felt something like relief and then anger. He'd risked everything. "You okay?" He barked at Lena as he moved between me and Cole. For a second, Cole's cool mask faltered. He watched Harris like you watch an old rival. "So the law finally crawled out of the woodwork," he said. "Did you bring backup, detective? Or just your conscience?" Harris didn't answer. He scanned the yard. But then, like the rest of us, he realized we were still surrounded. Cole's cleaners were everywhere, tucked like thorns into the perimeter. He'd set a trap not just for Lena, but for anyone who tried to reach her. Cole raised his hands. "You'll all be fine if you just walk away?" No videos, no cops. Leave. Let me keep the others. You mean the women? Harris said. Cole shrugged as if shrugging off weather. Business. The standoff stretched thin like cloth about to snap. I could feel the tension in my muscles. My heart was a-thunder. Then small noises, the hiss of walkie-talkies, and a voice came across a frequency I didn't recognize. It was clipped, professional, and cold. This is Federal Task Unit. Cole Walker, hands up. You are surrounded. Surrender now. Cole's eyes narrowed. How? He spat. The answer was a man in plain clothes stepping from between two containers with a badge tucked into his belt. An agent from a federal trafficking task force. He flicked on a phone showing images and names. The passports, the ledgers found in the lighthouse. Someone left you a breadcrumb, Cole, he said. Someone with good motive. Cole's jaw tightened. For a split second, his control wavered. That's the moment any predator fears. Harris moved, gun raised, but I was already kneeing forward, snapping the zip tie around my wrist with practiced desperation. I'd been saving strength for one clean motion. Lena's eyes met mine, hollow but luminous, and I saw something else. Hope. Chaos erupted. Cole's cleaners lunged. Men shouted. The task force surged like a tide. I grabbed a fallen crowbar and charged a man who'd been moving to cut Lena's chains. He swung wide. I ducked and bashed his collarbone. It hurt like a vice, but I kept going. Someone hit me from behind. The world blurred, and then hands were on my throat. I kicked, elbowed, tasted blood. But in the melee, Harris's team reached Lena, cut the chains, and dragged her free. She collapsed into Harris's arms and then into mine. Cole tried to run. He was fast, but not fast enough. The agent with the badge cut him off at a stairwell and tackled him to the ground with a professional brutality that made him freeze. Men in black ripped off his leather jacket. He was handcuffed in a flurry, his expression turning first to fury, then to the small, scared look of a trapped animal. For the first time since I'd met him in glimpses across footage and hearsay, his scent was just human. Sweat and fear. They loaded him up, his jaw tight. As they prodded him, he looked at Lena. You gave me up, he said bitterly. You were weak. Lena, Meg still shaking, Meg spat at his face. She looked like a different person. Angry, exhausted, and suddenly not a frightened thing to be paraded. I held her, feeling the tremors slowly become sobs. The aftermath felt both immediate and unreal. The federal team moved with efficient calm, photographing, bagging evidence, calling in more agents. There were other women found in nearby containers, some conscious, some in a state that made everyone stop and look away. Harris stayed near us like a sentinel. In the back, Cole's ledger, the passports, the routes, the recorded transactions, were loaded into evidence boxes that would, they said, help unravel the network. I wanted to collapse. Instead, I hugged Lena hard, feeling the realness of her under my hands. She smelled like diesel and salt and fear, but she smelled like herself too, her forehead pressed against mine. I'm so sorry, she whispered, voice thin. For what? I asked. For not trusting you? For letting him make me believe you wanted me gone. She closed her eyes. He made me think I'd die if you ever found me. You shouldn't believe him, I said, though we both knew words had their limits. You're here. You're alive. Harris knelt and looked at me, eyes tired. You did good, Ryan. You got her out. His voice wavered only slightly, like a man who'd spent too long paying the cost of other people's mistakes. The federal agent, the one who'd cut Cole off, approached and introduced himself as Agent Martinez. He had a softness in the eyes that betrayed the man beneath the badge. He'd seen this kind of industry for years. We've got warrants. We're going to take this as far as we can. There are likely cells connected to Cole in several states. You did what you could to get her to us. That matters. We rode with Lena in an armored van back to a safe facility. The ride was silent, but for quiet breathing, and the soft, almost mechanical curses of men wrapping up a job. When we arrived, doctors and counselors met us. They wrapped Lena in a blanket, checked her for wounds, offered water that made her lips quiver. Agents took statements from me. They took pictures. They asked about the note, the bus footage, the lighthouse, every breadcrumb I'd gathered. I told them everything, down to the details I'd almost forgotten. When I finished, Agent Martinez closed his notepad and said, You may have saved a lot of lives tonight. It may take months, maybe years to clean this up. But you started something. We didn't return home. There was too much risk. Instead, Lena was taken to a secure facility where she could get medical and psychological help without worry. Harris stayed in contact, and the Federal Task Unit asked me to give a formal statement later, maybe testify. The legal part of it felt like a different country where maps were drawn in schedules and courtrooms. The night after, I sat alone in a small room provided by the task force. The city lights smeared through the window. My hands were scraped and my back ached. My mind kept nudging at something that didn't yet feel resolved. Cole was in custody, but his ledger suggested a larger network. There would be trials, arrests, watch lists, but networks like his are Hydra-headed. Cut one off and another grows. I would likely be dragged through depositions and interrogations, but those felt like price tags I was willing to pay. I thought about Lena's words. Don't try to save me. She had said it because she'd believed it was the only way to survive, to convince herself that help would kill rather than save. I thought about my own arrogance, how I'd ignored signs, clicked on the wrong links, trusted the wrong things at work. Guilt gnawed, but the fact that Lena was alive eased it. Not enough to absolve, but enough to move on. A week later, Lena was stronger. The counselors said she had a long road ahead, but she smiled once, small and real, at a cup of real coffee that tasted like something human. She held my hand and squeezed. They can keep taking pieces of me, she said quietly, but they can't take everything. We moved slowly back into life, the kind with appointments and paperwork and phone calls to find a new place to live. The task force provided resources and a program to help survivors reclaim identification and rebuild identity. Lena enrolled in therapy and support groups. Harris kept in touch like a tether to a world that had some form of justice. Cole's trial was months away and would be messy, public, and ugly. But that day, in the cold courtroom where cameras and lawyers circled like vultures, the ledger and the testimony of men and women who'd been taken formed a net that the prosecution tightened around him. Evidence from the lighthouse, the shipping yard, and the passports tied individuals together. He was convicted on multiple counts: trafficking, kidnapping, fraud, and slowly, juridical inches at a time, people like him found themselves in cages his kind thought were reserved for lesser prey. It didn't end all of it. There were arrests and then more arrests. Some men slipped through and some girls were still missing, but the cells fractured. Cole's clients and buyers, exposed in court, dissolved into a scattering of people trying to keep a distance from notices and subpoenas. The ledger's fingerprints led investigators across state lines and into the ugly machinery that made him powerful. That machinery trembled and then stuttered. Months later, Lena and I stood quietly on the pier where we'd first taken our anniversary photo, the one in the locket clutched in my hand. The wind wrenched at her hair. She looked healthy now, cheeks filled out, color under her eyes, a steadiness that had been absent for so long. We didn't speak much. There was no tidy speech. No promise that everything would be fixed. We'd learned the truth of trauma. It's not a thing that disappears. It's a weight you learn to carry differently. She turned to me and touched my face with a whisper of a smile. You saved me, she said simply. You saved yourself, I said, by not giving up. She laughed then, a small, fragile sound that held more than we'd both realized. Maybe we save each other, she replied. We walked away from the pier together, step by step, not pretending the past hadn't happened, but acknowledging that we were continuing anyway. There would be therapy sessions and legal testimony. There would be nights when nightmares returned. There would also be mornings with coffee and slow breakfasts. And after that, the possibility of a future that wasn't defined by someone else's ledger. As for me, I found new work that didn't involve building digital keys for strangers. I volunteered with a support group, talking to people about how to watch for red flags, how to build safer online boundaries, how to listen. Harris and I shared beers sometimes, the silence between us comfortable now. Agent Martinez sent updates, arrests and leads, and sometimes notes of gratitude with no expectation of anything in return. It took a long time to forgive myself. Maybe I never would fully, but forgiveness didn't matter as much as responsibility. I carried the locket in my pocket, a small dented circle of metal with a photograph that reminded me of a life that had nearly been erased. It reminded me why I kept going. People asked how I found her, how I did it. I could tell them the parts that looked like luck, the pieces that were grit and stubbornness. But underlying it was something I wasn't sure I could teach, the refusal to accept absence as an answer, the belief that silence didn't always mean consent, and that shadowy networks, as dangerous as they were, relied on human arrogance and indifference to survive. The case became a cautionary headline for a while. It prompted investigations, hearings, and slow policy changes. It didn't end the trade, and it didn't end the people who profit from it, but it made a dent. And for Lena and for those other women found in containers and cellars, the dent mattered. On slow nights when the city was quiet and the wind smelled like the sea, I would sometimes pull up the freeze frame of that old documentary, the bus terminal clip with Lena in my hoodie. I would look at her face and remember how small and terrified she had been, and how stubborn we both were to survive the next days. I would think of Cole, manacled and then diminished, and feel a hollow victory, one that cost far too much. But victory, in any small form, was victory. We had walked through darkness and found, by threads of hope and the stubbornness of one man who refused to be told the story's end, a way back to life. And that is, for now, enough.